Welcome back to the show. Dana and I are on fire right now.
Yeah. We're thinking about being outside the box.
And the pros and cons of being outside the box.
Yeah.
Because there are definitely pros and cons of outside of the box thinking.
Yep. Yes. So I think outside the box thinking is something that happens to a lot of, probably most neurodivergents would identify with thinking outside the box. Meaning the box is a neurotypical box and we think outside because we have to define the box. It's like Schrodinger's cat. What is the box? Is the cat dead? Is the cat not dead? No, we need to talk about the box. Right?
Forget the cat.
Forget the cat. Yeah. So it's sort of is like, is your thinking something that is mainstream thinking, or is it something that other people wouldn't think of? I thank God almost not God literally, but it's a goddess.
Figure speech.
I thank the universe every day that my mom recognized that my outside box thinking was a good thing. She saw it as creativity. She saw it as you haven't hit your stride yet, but you will. And I remember I have a Kleenex box sitting here. I remember sitting in her house once as an adult. We were just sitting around her house, and she's like me. She had Kleenex boxes in every room. And it was towards the end. There was hardly any Kleenex left. And I was just playing with the box, and I opened the end of the box. Maybe I'll even do it for our listeners who have video, because this one's almost empty.
Oh, okay,
so I'm just playing with the box, and it's a box, right? So I open it up, and I see this, especially like that part. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that is trippy. And the conversation stopped. Dana, what the hell are you doing? And I said, this is what a Kleenex sees. This is a Kleenex box view. This is a Kleenex view of the world, right? My mom thought that was the coolest thing ever. She's like, I love the way you think. Who in the hell would think this is the way she talked? My swearing is from her, just so you know. How in the bleep, 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 did you think that? I'm like, oh, I didn't, but it was really like outside the box thinking. It's just sort of this curiosity, seeing things from different perspectives, which is a good thing, right? Creativity, coming up with solutions for things that other people hadn't thought about. I think those are all positives. The negative part about it is when you can't understand something and you say, it's over here, like the outside the box, and then you get this look from people like you're crazy. Like, where the hell did that come from, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And you hear the record screeching, right? And it's like, oh, crap, there it is. But I think there's a reason why when you have a bunch of neurodivergent people together, they're thinking that way, and they're sort of loving that. But I watch things like a special on industrial light and magic, like how that whole process happened and how they came to be. 90% of the people working there, even at the beginning, were neurodivergent, right? These are all people that were put in a think tank. They were selected for their outside the box thinking. They were praised for that, and that's how you got what we got from Star Wars and all those movies out of that. These are not your typical Hollywood people that were thinking that way. Computers, innovation, almost across recorded history, has been pioneered by people that were thinking outside the box, knowing that the culture was seeing them and marginalizing them as different. They were having to deal with that. I think there's a reason why, you look at artists over millennia, a lot of them end up killing themselves or they die by themselves, and people don't understand them. Mozart, ends up dying of consumption because he has all this creative energy and there's just nowhere to go with it. We can't go back and say those people were autistic or ADHD, but they probably were. But the negative part to me is the reaction that you get from the outside world when you have some of those things. Thank goodness for my mom, who is like, she just recognized it as something special. Like, wow, that's so cool, right? And seeing the world in that way. My sister now will marvel at that. She's like, damn, Dana, I love your brain. But there were plenty of times growing up where that wasn't the case. It was just like, oh, that's just Dana. But it meant to be like in a there, you're kind of weird kind of way.
Patronizing. Like a more patronizing kind of way.
Yeah. And still can. I mean, certainly, especially in social situations, if I throw something out there that I think is super funny and it's in a room full of neurotypicals, sometimes it just doesn't go over well. Like you were mentioning in the other episode, when we were interviewing someone several years ago and someone just made a comment like, well, at least he didn't show up in like a tank top. I said, yeah, I didn't show up in like thongs. And people thought I said thong like the underwear thong. And I actually meant thongs like flip-flops because the guy grew up in Florida, but everybody heard it as the underwear thong. And the room you could hear, and then I didn't realize what was happening. I just thought, oh, I made a joke that wasn't funny about flip-flops. And then as I was driving home, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I think they thought I said thong. I still remember writing an email after I got home. Just to clarify, I wasn't being inappropriate. I didn't say thongs. I meant flip-flops, tongs. You know, that's a word for that.
Yeah.
But it was just a perfect example of that. Whoa, Dana, what did you just say? Right? So we get a lot of that. And it is that fight back and forth of that, the creativity versus that. And then when you do start to find some success with your creativity, you kind of don't believe it. I have a guy recently diagnosed that I follow on Threads, amazing artist. He posts his stuff. He got a book deal and he still is like, how is this happening? I'm like, because you're awesome. But he still has this feeling of like, oh God, someone's gonna, come and say this isn't okay, or you're bad. And you can see the real trauma that's there for being an outside the box thinker, right?
Yeah, different.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
It's like different. Like it's not it. People don't know what to do when they're surprised by something,
Right.
like it's like, how do I make sense of that surprise, whatever that is, right? It's not what I was expecting. It was unexpected for me.
Yeah.
I find that the cognitive and thought connections that my clients make, they blow me away.
Yeah.
I'm like, my IQ points can't even patch something together to even get to where you are, right?
They're like, blah, 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 and then they come back here. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that kind of light speed thinking, like you and I spoke about light speed thinking in a different episode, but it's like this very out of the box light speed thinking that's connecting concepts and thoughts that you would never expect that really, I think, can throw people off in conversations. Like, I don't know how you got there, but that's where you got. So there's that piece. But it's also for me that I'm seeing where when the out of the box thinking is not done in the right place.
Yeah.
It is judged.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. In academia where I work, certainly for people still going through school, it's judged by that environment, workplaces, families, right? I love that my wife now, we've been together long enough that I'll be like, bear with me on this and I'll do a thing. And she may have been skeptical in the past and be like, what are you doing? And now she knows. She's like, she'll stop herself and she'll start to be like, what are you doing? And then we have this saying in our house. She's like, you know what you're doing. Like, which is really nice because it's like, I know it's going to be great in the end. Like my building project, she's like, you know what you're doing, even if it seems crazy out there as you're doing it. But that's been a process of like a very, close relationship and understanding that. And we borrowed that saying from our brother-in-law who says, you know what you're doing. But you're not afforded that kind of grace in a lot of ways and in most places. So it gets, I really do think this is one of the things that contributes to especially undiagnosed adults who are neurodivergent. Almost all of them have complex trauma. And this is one of the ways that gets set down. You're trying to be yourself. You're trying to be unique. You're trying to just be how your brain works, and it gets judged and suppressed and tampered down and told it's wrong and sit still and don't think that way and all that kind of stuff. And that sense of like, how do I open this up now, right? How do I let that happen now? My own therapist did that with me around creativity. It was revelation for me, like, oh, okay, I don't draw things like my older sister who can draw horses in a real way. I'm not a realistic artist. But other ways of expressing those things are really cool. And my therapist was like, that is amazing, and having someone say, this is great, right? Find an avenue for that. And it doesn't matter if someone likes it, you like it, and this is really cool. People that I work with over the years, I always ask them about creativity, whatever it is, and then try to fan that fire a little bit, because almost everybody has it, and almost everybody has that trauma of, I shouldn't do this. And I say, no, there's so much of your vitality as a human that's wrapped up in creativity, that if you get that hacked off, you're not living. And by creativity, I don't mean necessarily making art. That can be one thing. Enjoying, sci-fi movies, enjoying reading The Lord of the Rings, enjoying Harry Potter, or whatever. I have a client right now who's really into researching serial killers. Totally fits for that person, right? So those are forms of creativity, and wanting to see what's out there outside of their existing box. That's a form of creativity as well. And when you're told as a little kid, where you're drawing a cow and it's a purple crayon, there's a book called Cows Can Be Purple. And the teacher says, cows aren't purple. And then the shame that person felt, like, well, why not? Maybe cows in real life aren't purple. Well, what the hell? I'm in third grade and I'm drawing a cow. Who am I hurting by drawing a purple cow? And actually, purple cows are pretty cool on paper, right? But there's so many systems, school systems, family systems, whatever, that would want to you to not be outside the box because you're weird, and we're going to get flack for this if you're a weird kid, right? And so stay the mainstream. Don't go outside of that, right?
Yeah, that resonates with me from a cultural place, being immigrants, right? Early
blend
on,
in.
my parents
don't
blend,
draw attention.
assimilate.
Yep.
The phrase in my house was, the nail that sticks up always gets hit on the head.
Damn.
Always. There was a strong message of anti-individualism.
Yeah.
And so, you followed the rules. You stayed unnoticed. Right? Like, you needed to, to the point of just washing out my culture, like my ethnic culture in my home, of like, you're not going to speak our language. You're going to learn English, and you're not going to have an accent. Period. You're not going to, you're going to go to school and you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to blend in at all costs. And I understand,
but also do really well, right? Blend in, but excel, which is really hard to do.
Yeah. And, I get it. I mean, I get that's coming from this kind of survivalism, of like, you need to survive.
The reasons
for
it. Yeah.
But I think, like, the out of the box thinking, I see as two sides of the same coin, like, it's creative and amazing. And when it's in the right place, it's unmatched.
Yeah. Right.
On the other side of that, living in the world causes a lot of, like, there's a lot of suffering and pain.
Yeah.
Because the feel is so different. Like, I don't fit in.
Yeah.
I don't belong. I am judged all over the place. I can't be myself. There's something wrong with me. It's like these messages. So when you talk about complex trauma, right?
Yeah.
What else are we saying? There's, like, inevitably anxiety in one hand and depression in the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And having lost track of who you are as an essential human, because it's been so skewed by people putting bumpers there where you can't go off of those, right?
Yeah.
And then whether it's survival, understandable survival, or other things, and then how do you re-explore and get those back, right? And that, I can only speak for my own process. It was a deliberate process to try to do that, and give myself permission to do those things, knowing that, some people might look at it and poo-poo it and whatever, building up that callus to, well, it's not for you, it's for me, right? It's the process of this. It's the most important, not the product or whatever it is. But yeah, there's a lot of there's a huge social pressure to conform and not be too weird and be outside the box. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of clients I work with too, one of my adults, one of my recommendations always is to find your peeps. And nowadays on groups online, neurodivergent groups online, and I'll get sort of some resistance from this. I go, it's a social thing, even though it's online, and people are going to think I'm weird. And I'm like, oh, trust me, you go onto a listserv with all neurodivergent people, you're going to be fine. And then they do, and they're like, oh my God, this person said X, Y, and Z, and I thought I was the only one, right? Yeah. And we have a human need to belong. It's just a matter of finding where people that are like you are, and that you can all, lift each other up, right? That is about letting people be themselves and lifting that up, lifting that narrative of that from that place. And everybody usually is like, oh my God, this is great. People think like I do. I never knew this was a thing. And that's one thing the internet's been great about, because if you lived in a small town and you were the only neurodivergent kid, you're not going to find anybody else. But online, we're out there. You can find a lot of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great.
And then not feel so weird. Yeah. Yeah. So let your freak flag fly. That's the saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It is a balance. It is a balance and being intentional about where you can do these things. But one thing is for sure, you need a place to be able to do it, to be yourself, to think outside of the box. That is, this goes back to our masking episodes, psychological masking. Yeah. We did get dinged on that from someone. Someone's like, I thought you guys were going to be talking about face masking. And
Masks,
I was like, yeah, sorry, our bad. But that idea of, when do you mask and when do you not? And when is it good and when is it bad? And there are definitely pros and cons to that. And that masking inherently is a part of being in the mainstream, but
yeah, we all do it to a certain degree, but then how do you let that out? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You can't do that all the time without losing a sense of who you are.
No. And to be 100% genuine all the time, if I went through my day,
oh my God,
I'd be locked up people would come in white jackets, right? I'd just be like, la, 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 doing everything I wanted to. Yeah. But that's to a certain extent true for anybody. We learn social norms and but in terms of letting all that stuff out for a neurodivergent, when it starts to come out, it could feel overwhelming at first, but it's okay. You can always rely on masking if you need to. It's sort of like you can always rely on dissociation if you're working through trauma. You can always use that to your advantage if it's too much, right?
Yeah, and to make it a choice, not a reflex.
Yeah. That's right.
And that's something that we talk about a lot too, because, I think some of our audience said, when you mask because of trauma, that's not good. And it's we understand that. Like, we understand that. And so what we're saying is that masking served as a protective mechanism for you during awful times. Yeah. So choosing when to use that as a tool, look at it as a tool. It's not something that is just kind of existent all of the time. But
exactly.
But whenever we're talking about thinking outside of the box and being yourself and being different, inevitably all of this comes up.
That's what comes up. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. All right, everyone. Well, we will catch you in the next episode. See you later. Bye.